Well, welcome back to the Farmside Chat, and I'm real excited to have my two guests today, Tara and Natalie. They're going to be talking about their Elevating Ag podcast, a little bit about their farm and their families, and we look forward to that. Before we get into that, I want to tell you about this project we've had going on here at American Farm Bureau. It's a project to make everybody aware of all the sustainability work that our farmers and ranchers are doing across the country. So we have accumulated videos of farmers and ranchers telling us about their sustainability work. And Tara is one of those guests that we visited out at her farm and made a video of it. And you can find that on fb.org/sustainability. But you'll also find this great interactive map where you can go to any state in the United States and Puerto Rico and find those sustainability stories that our farmers and ranchers are so proud to share with you. So I hope you'll enjoy that project that we put on. Well, welcome back to Farmside Chat. I'm Zippy Duvall, President of American Farm Bureau and host for the podcast today. As you know, I travel the country, talk to our farmers, bring their stories to you at your home or while you're riding down the road. Hope you're enjoying listening to all our farmer stories. But today we're going to talk to two young ladies that probably do an even better job than I do at telling that story. And I have Tara and Natalie with me. They are podcasters. Their podcast is called Elevate Ag. And we're going to hear about them and their farms and their families and why they do what they do to try to elevate agriculture. So Tara and Natalie, thank you and welcome to the show. Would you tell our guests a little bit about the farms you come from and maybe the families that are there on the farm?
Thank you so much for having us on. We really appreciate it. We're excited to talk with your audience. So I'm Tara Vander Dussen. I am a fifth-generation dairy farmer, and I married a fifth-generation dairy farmer. So dairy is everywhere in my life, basically all-consuming. I dairy farm now with my husband and his parents and his brothers and their families on our dairy farm in eastern New Mexico, along with our two daughters. We have two young daughters. My role on the dairy, I guess, is a little bit unique. I actually work as an environmental consultant and consult with dairy farms throughout New Mexico on environmental regulations, permitting, water use, manure management. So I don't do a lot with the cows, actually. I do more on the environmental side of things. And then several years ago, I just really saw the need to really start sharing our story online. And I wanted to share specifically about dairy's impact on the environment. And so that is what I share about on, my platforms, and just try to, like you said, elevate the voices of agriculture.
And I'm Natalie Kovarik. I ranch in central Nebraska with my husband and our three boys. I, like Tara, grew up in agriculture. I'm a Nebraska transplant. I was originally raised in southwest Montana on a seed stock operation there. And my husband whisked me away to the beautiful sandhills of Nebraska when we got married. And so I kind of found myself back in agriculture, ranching. And kind of like Tara, a couple years ago, I saw this need, and I really had this desire and passion alongside that to start sharing our ranching and family story online. And that's actually how Tara and I connected and how we kind of, individually we shared for a long time, but within the past year we've come together and created Elevate Ag, which, as you mentioned, is a podcast, and then also an online course to help producers, do what we're doing and do what you're doing, President Duvall, which is, sharing and advocating for our industry.
Well, first of all, Tara, when you started talking about what your job was on the farm, it sounded like a little bit like what my wife's job was back in the 80s and 90s, but she's the one that I said, I don't have time to go to that class about manure management. How about you going? And she became our comprehensive manure management manager for our farm. And they put it on the front page of the paper. And she said, of all titles, I had to have that one. Yours is a lot more eloquent.
I've been called a manure expert before, and I'm not ashamed of it. I am also a certified TSP for NRCS for comprehensive nutrient management plans. So I have written a fair share of nutrient management plans in my day.
And Natalie, I've been to the Sand Hills, and I think one of the first trips I took as president of American Farm Bureau. And in Georgia, we don't really have ranches; we just have farms. I got 400 cows on my farm, mother cows, and you know, when I go to a meeting, first thing you say is, "How many cows you got?" Well, I went to the Sand Hills and asked this guy how many cows he had, and he immediately challenged me, saying, "Well, how much money do you have in your bank?" So I know that when you go to the Sand Hills, you don't ask the ranchers how many cows they're running. So it was an interesting experience. So y'all both brought back fond memories from my past. So tell me a little bit more about your farm. You probably don't know this, but a lot of my listeners aren't farmers. They're people in the urban areas, and I've been told that a lot of them are y'all's age, and young mothers listening to the people in the stories about the people that produce their food. So one of the things is, can you give us some idea of the size of your farm? Because everybody thinks of agriculture as being huge, and we represent the small, the little, the medium size, and the large farms too. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're large or small. We all do a job to fill everybody's pantry. So give them some idea about your farm and the size of it.
Yeah, so I dairy farm in New Mexico, and one of the things New Mexico is known for as far as dairy farming goes is we have the largest average herd size. Our average herd size in New Mexico is about 2,800. And we have a couple of barns, and overall we're milking right at about 13,000 cows, which I know when I say that to consumers, their eyes get crazy big, but we are actually just a regular family farm. We just have a lot of family members that our farm supports. It is my husband, and he's from a family of 6 boys. 5 out of the 6 boys are directly on farm every single day, along with their dad. And then obviously now we're raising the next generation, so it's a multi-generational family farm. I always tell people, like, big does not mean bad. A big does not mean not family. And so that's kind of where I really strongly advocate for that as well, is just because the farm might look a little bit different than what people expect, the families behind those farms are still the same.
And I would echo kind of what Tara said. I'm in Nebraska, and we're known for being the beef state. And my husband, if you've ever met him, you will know one thing is very obvious, and that is that he's very passionate about cattle. And so we do have a larger herd. But we're also, one of the unique things about us is we don't actually farm. My husband would rather be involved with more cattle in different ways. And so we're a little bit diversified, and it's kind of hard to explain. I do enjoy explaining to people who aren't familiar with the beef industry, because I think they think that all cattle are kind of raised the same way. And when you think about, beef in agriculture, it's the same from, ranch to ranch or farm to farm in your area, Zippy. But it's not. There's different ways to be involved in the beef sectors. And we're involved in a cow-calf, which for, consumers listening, that basically means we're helping raise the beef that ends up on, the plate or in the restaurant. We're also involved in the seed stock, which is, mostly raised for genetics. And so that's what producers, they raise cattle to get really good genetics for our industry. And then we're also involved in, a few smaller backgrounding and some other areas. And so like Tara, we're just a family operation. We are a larger one, but it's me and my husband. And we do have some really outstanding help, which is important. But that's one thing, like Tara said, I love to share on my page, because people will say, if we could just eat beef from families like yours and support families like yours, we'd feel better about, our consumer choices. And I love to echo that, no matter the farm or ranch size, you are really buying and supporting a family when it comes to agriculture.
A
lot of people don't understand that way over 90% of the farms across America are family operated and owned farms, so, and, because of the scale of efficiencies, we have to do things together with many members of our family to become larger, to be able to be efficient enough to be able to provide a living for all of us. And if you all go off and buy $1 million pieces of machinery each, you wouldn't be able to afford to stay in business. So it's a way of being streamlining things and making us be able to be efficient to do that. So in Georgia, I'm a cow-calf guy and a poultry producer. And we raise 1.5 million chickens on my farm every year. And I got 400 mama cows, where I send about 400 feeder calves out to they actually went to Nebraska this year. So they're being fed that good Nebraska corn out there in your state. Probably not in your part of the state, but probably on the eastern side, probably of the state. So we have a lot in common. And I dairied for 30 years, Tara, before I got in the beef business in 2005. I ended up doing what I wanted to do when I was a child. I wanted to be in the beef business to start with, but I couldn't figure out how to raise a family on the small income there. And things have changed over the years, and I'm glad to be in the beef business today. But I have fond memories of the dairy business. So, I think y'all mentioned that y'all discovered you liked stuff, like the same things and wanted to elevate ag. But tell us how y'all met.
I mean, I feel like classic millennials. We met online. We met online probably 4 years ago at least. And last March, we actually met in person for the first time. But before that, we talked almost every day. Now we talk obviously multiple times throughout the day. And late last year, we just realized we had a lot of synergies between what we wanted and how we wanted to help other producers. We both were getting a lot of questions from producers and farmers asking, how do I share my story online? Like, how do I do this? And we wanted to help people. And so that was really the foundation for Elevate Ag, was being able to answer farmers' questions about how they can share their story, how they can use that to maybe start a business. Like a lot, this is, in the midst of the pandemic where a lot of beef producers wanted to do direct to consumer beef, and they wanted to know how to market it, how to use something like Instagram to market that. And we really just took that opportunity to be able to help them through our platforms with Elevate.
So like most 60-year-old guys and older, I met y'all in person for the first time before I even knew you or knew of you at the Honor to Harvest USFRA meeting out in Iowa, where we were talking about sustainability. I know both of you have a passion for sustainability, telling the sustainability story, because all us farmers have a passion for it. So tell us a little bit about sustainability on your farm. Let's start with you, Natalie.
Yeah, it was fun to meet you out there. It was a really great conference, and I think they did a good job highlighting sustainability. But that isn't something that's unique just to that conference. That's something that is echoed at agriculture conferences across the nation, and really spoken in the households of farmers and producers everywhere. Like the forefront of what we care about is sustainability, as an industry and in our own operations. And I personally, like you kind of said, bringing it back to our operation, my husband and I, at the micro level of what we do on our ranch, we're really passionate about, caring for our cattle in the best way that's the best for the environment. So we do a lot of different techniques, and cattle themselves, I actually share a lot about this on my personal page on Instagram about the benefits of cattle grazing and what it can do for, the soil and the health and the environment overall. And so just running cattle on our operation makes me really proud, because I know that, those animals are doing great things for the environment.
And Tara?
Yeah. And for me, obviously, sustainability is a big part of just what I do with my job. And so one thing I love to say is sustainability looks different on every farm across the country. Even within our family, we have multiple barns that are ran differently, and what works for one herd doesn't work for another. And so sustainability can be so diverse across the country. For us in dairy, I feel like a big part of our sustainability story is kind of the unsung hero, and it is what our cows eat. Dairy cows eat a lot of like quote unquote byproducts. I kind of like hate that word because I feel like it makes it sound like a waste product, when really it's just leftovers from things we do, like making cotton. There's the cotton seed that's left over, and our cows are able to eat that as a really great source of protein and fiber. We can eat like distiller's grain, bakery waste, grocery store waste. I mean, the list literally goes on and on of all the things that cattle are able to eat that would otherwise end up in landfills. And instead, they're able to upcycle it and turn it into nutritious products. So that's one of my favorite things. Like, it's something every dairy farm does across the country, and yet it, like, I don't know, it doesn't always get highlighted in the way I think it should, because it's a powerful part of our sustainability story.
Yeah, both of those sustainability efforts are going on all over America and on a lot of farms. And you're right, there is many different ways to move towards sustainability on your farm. So y'all mentioned meeting online, and you also mentioned helping farmers learn how to tell their story. On social media, a lot of times what people read is not positive about agriculture. So that's what makes y'all's podcast so powerful. It tells a true story from the farms. But what do you tell farmers? Because farmers are not, well, they're really busy, and it's hard to kind of take time to do that. They're very humble, so they don't really want to brag or talk about what they do. And then, of course, not hardly any of them want to be confronted confrontationally with people that don't understand what they do. So, what do you do to help people understand how important it is for us to tell our job, and how to do it in a way that people may have open ears and hear you, or may open up their selves to listen to what we have to say?
I feel like there's so many ways you could go with this conversation. It's like a complex question. But I think that as we continue realizing that people and consumers want more transparency, they want to know where their food comes from. That is just a fact. And so I feel like, not sharing online is not going to be for every farmer everywhere, but for the ones that really feel called to do that, and I think more and more are, especially as the younger generation is coming up, it's a way for them to connect with people outside the farm. Agriculture can be kind of isolating in our rural communities, and social media has given us this great tool to open up our farms and invite people virtually onto our farms. And so I really just stress when I talk with farmers about the value in it. Consumers hold all the power as far as their buying power and how they make decisions at the grocery store. And if we can have conversations with them online through online platforms and help them better see why we're doing what we're doing, it just goes a really long way when they get to the grocery store of feeling confident in our food supply system, feeling like they can trust us as farmers. I know the Farm Bureau has a really great stat about how farmers are very trustworthy sources of information. People do trust us when we share, and so that trust with that trust comes great responsibility of us needing to get out there and talk with people because they believe what we have to say.
And I think it's important to remind producers that it's a really exciting time for us in agriculture. Like Tara said, we have so many, young people stepping up and rejoining the family farms and ranches. And instead of feeling frustrated about, President Duvall, as you mentioned, there's some narratives out there that we want to correct and, wrong ones. And so instead of feeling frustrated about it or getting down about it, we have this really great tool, literally in the palm of our hands that does not cost us a penny to get on, that we can bridge the gap really effectively. And so I think it's reminding them that it's an exciting tool. It gives us a lot of, almost our power back. It lets us bring people literally to our operation every single day. If you hopped, if anyone listening to this hopped onto Instagram and followed Tara and I, you would feel like you were at the dairy with us. You would feel like you were out at my ranch, checking cattle or seeing the newborn baby calf being born. And so it really gives us just this powerful tool to share our story, and every single producer has one. So I think we need to remind people to get excited about that.
Well, you wouldn't believe it. Yesterday I was standing in line waiting to get into the Supreme Court because we had a case with the pork producers that we had sued California over Prop 12, and the Supreme Court heard that case yesterday, and we were part of it. So I went to be part of the audience. Well, I had to stand in line to get in. I was standing right beside a young lady who was with HSUS, and we started talking, and she found out I wasn't a really bad guy because I come from agriculture, and I pulled out my phone and showed her the calf that was born backwards, and we was able to take it and save it, and my grandchildren were petting it and playing with it, and she was like, all of a sudden she said, "Oh, I could see it in her eyes. You're not quite so bad after all, So it is a great opportunity. We don't get to see people face to face, but I say all that to say this is our time because we do have social media to do this, and we should be utilizing it to do it. You mentioned our survey. It says 87% of people give us an 80% approval rating or a favorable rating or trust level rating, and that's one of the highest in any profession out there. So when y'all are doing your interaction with people, do you feel that 87% trust level, or do you feel more negativism?
I feel like overwhelmingly sharing online is a positive experience for me, and I think Natalie will echo that sentiment. I do think when you just simply start having a conversation, you don't go at them trying to teach at them or educate them. You just, like you said, just start sharing your everyday stories. It's not as complicated as we put it out in our minds sometimes. It's literally just our day to day lives is fascinating to people. Not everyone has that. I know in ag we like see within our bubble a lot of times, but for people outside of ag, yeah, they don't get to see a baby calf being born in their backyard every day. And so just by like sharing that, it just opens the conversation. And yes, sometimes there are negative conversations, but I think too often those get highlighted more than the positive ones, because overwhelmingly my experiences online have been positive.
Sometimes it can be hard to silence the loudest voice, but we have to remember that the loudest isn't the most popular. And just because it's the loudest, it doesn't mean it's, shared by everyone. And so I would completely echo what Tara said, which for me, sharing online has been an overwhelmingly positive experience. I feel like I have a really great supportive community of people within the industry and people with outside of the industry that, we're building trust with every single day. And of course, sometimes, and that's, the beautiful thing about social media is you get to reach people you wouldn't normally reach. And so sometimes, if you produce a really great piece of content, you do reach really far. And sometimes that can fall into people that aren't really interested in, learning more about farming and ranching and agriculture, really understanding it truly at its core. And so sometimes you get some backlash, but it's very minute and overall, it's a very positive, really fun thing to do.
Well, Natalie, you mentioned misconceptions. Tell me some of the top misconceptions that y'all hear about, and or things
Yeah.
misconceptions that we have or should be dealing with.
Yeah, I try and kind of stay in my own wheelhouse of, where I feel comfortable advocating. So I don't really get into like diet and meat a whole bunch, but, I do like to focus a lot on climate and cattle just because I do feel like, people are making choices about what they buy and feed their families off of a lot of misinformation about, cattle's role in the environment and how meat can be bad. And that's just simply not true. And I always say I will always stand for food choice. I am by no means trying to limit, the choices people have of the different diets they can feed their families, but I always want those choices to be made on factual truth. And if people are deciding to not eat meat in their diet because they think it's going to, better, save us from climate change, or because cows are the one things that are ruining the environment, that is not true at all. And so that's really where I spend a lot of my time, and where I really like to lend my voice on, is because cattle are such an important role when it comes to actually improving climate change.
There's a lot of misconceptions around dairy. What about it, Tara?
I know. I was going to say there's a lot of misconceptions around dairy. One that I've been hearing a lot online is actually pitting different like milks against each other, like conventional milk versus organic versus grass-fed. And that's been one I've been hitting really hard, is that again, like Natalie, you can pick whichever milk makes sense for you and your family. But I want people that pick the cheapest milk on the shelf to know it's just as nutritious and just as safe. I personally pick the cheapest milk on the shelf, and I know exactly what goes into making it, and I feel completely safe feeding it to my family. So I just think that options are amazing, but there's not a need to like bash one food over another. People have different dietary concerns, different budgets that they're looking at, especially with the way inflation is right now. I would hate for someone to think that they couldn't buy conventional, just the cheapest milk on the shelf because it was bad, but they couldn't afford like organic or grass-fed or something else, when in actuality, like, it comes down to what you're comfortable with and what your budget is, and all the milks are safe. And so that's just something I've been really trying to hit home on a lot of my posts, as I know families are struggling with food prices right now.
And see, Tara, we really need that, because a lot of people in the country, I mean, if you're are blessed enough to be able to buy whatever you think's best or whatever you want to buy, then you're blessed. But a lot of people don't have that choice. And when they go online and read things, they get misconceptions of, oh, well, this would be bad for me, but I can't afford that. So some people they say one thing and they think they have that in their heart, but when they go to the grocery store, they purchase with their billfold because that's all they can afford. And obviously, none of us, your farms or mine or anyone that I know, would want to send anything to the market that would harm anyone. And we would, everything we send to the market, we feed to our own children and to our own families. So everyone should feel comfortable and continue to trust us in the quality and abundance of food that we put out. So tell us a little bit more about Elevate Ag. Which one of you want to talk about that a little more? And how can people find you and be a part of that?
Yeah, so Elevate Ag, as we mentioned earlier, is an online course that Tara and I created. So it's literally you log into a platform and you watch a variety of different videos that Tara and I have made that lead you through understanding what your ag story is. Because how many times do we as producers go to a conference and they say, get out there and share your story, and you kind of leave the conference as a farmer or rancher thinking, gosh, I'm excited about this, but I'm not really entirely sure what they're talking about. Like, what is my ag story and how do I share it? And so, that's what our course answers. It leads you through understanding what you can talk about, what you want to talk about. It breaks down the different social media platforms, so we talk about Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, how you can utilize those different platforms, which one is maybe the best fit for you. So, at its core, it really is to get farmers and ranchers and anyone who's really excited about the ag industry and wants to support it, the tools they need to effectively share online and to create a really successful blueprint. And so that's the online course portion. And then we also have, as you mentioned, the podcast portion where we're sharing on there different things, to lend, to lend in those tools, the online course that you can put in kind of your tools to advocate better online.
Yeah, I think as we
Sorry, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I was thinking about, I actually had American Farm Bureau come out to our farm to do a video series at our farm, and that's something we're asking of farmers more and more. I know that was not the first time I've had a film crew on my dairy. I've had some different news outlets on. I've been on the Weather Channel, and so one of the things is, we want farmers to share their story, and both Natalie and I wanted them to feel confident in being able to share, like really be able to stand up and know what their message was, know why they were sharing what they were sharing. And so just trying to give them all of the tools and information. I feel like Natalie and I have learned a lot along the way, had a lot thrown at us, and kind of had to learn on the fly. And we wanted to be able to just give farmers, ranchers that information. Like, here's what we've learned. Like, if you're going to have a film crew on your farm, like, here's some great tips for getting ready for it. I mean, that's not something you're typically going to learn at, your college Department of Ag or anything like that. And so we just wanted to be able to kind of be a resource for farmers so that they didn't feel so, like, alone or lost in this space of this, like, digital sharing and this, like, social sharing space.
So do you see many guys my age doing it, or is it mostly young people?
It's definitely skewed towards younger. There's also, I feel like, more women maybe sharing online than men. But there are some OG guys out there that have been sharing like on Twitter since the beginning. And I feel like what they have seen change over the last 10, 15 years on social media, it's always interesting to talk with them because things have just changed so much, so drastically and so quickly. So I feel like there is room for all kinds on sharing your story online.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, for being part of my podcast today. Is there any last messages you'd like to share with my listeners?
I'd just like to encourage anyone listening that does want to get a taste of, what agriculture is like to search out for Tara and I online. My Instagram handle is at Natalie Kovarik, and Tara's is her name as well. It's at Tara Vander Dussen. So we love bringing new people into our community. We really love sharing, what we as families do on our, ranches and our dairy farms. And so we would love anyone who wants to get a better taste of that to find us and follow along.
And thank you so much, President Duvall, for having us on today. It was amazing sharing with your audience and community, and I hope they enjoyed it as much as we have.
Yeah, and Tara, before we get off, you did mention American Farm Bureau came to your farm
to
do a sustainability video. It's one of the many that we have online. We have a very interactive map that you can go and punch any state and get sustainability stories, and yours lives on that channel. So we just thank you for that participation. I thank y'all for your participation today. I know that our listeners enjoyed it, and we want to wish our listeners a wonderful day and just want to say God bless you.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Farmside Chat. Please be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, take a minute to rate and review the podcast. This helps us continue to bring you farm fresh content that everyone can enjoy. Until next time, Thank you, and God bless you.